Hello everyone, and welcome to part one of June Comes to Medicine Bow Country. Medicine Bow Mountains are just north of the Colorado line in Wyoming. So that's our subject matter for today. Before I go too far, I want to welcome the YouTube people to say that part one is part one of a three-part series, and you can find part two and three and 103 of my very best tutorials on Uscreen. And Uscreen is a paid platform, $9.99 a month. So you can have access to all those lessons, and of course this one too. All right, enough said about that. Let's get over to the painting. Today was block in, and we figured out where our shapes were going to be, and then concentrated on mixtures for the block in. Thin paints, because we're going to paint on top of it and get ready for part two, where we really start talking about how to balance things that are too dark or too light, right color, more intensity, less intensity in color. So with that, I guess one other thing. I'm only one small part of your painting education. You got to get outside and paint, get critiques, and get in front of a blank canvas. So if you want to learn how to paint and get some instruction every week or every day, let's go over to Uscreen and start painting. All right. Thank you so much for coming by, and see you in this painting. Let's get started. Okay, bye-bye. Hello and welcome to part one of June on the Medicine Bows. This is southern Wyoming, Medicine Bow Mountains. I'm George Call here for part one of a hopefully three-part series of this beautiful reference we have. And I painted it some time back in a small one, and I tried to find it. It's gone somewhere now, and I don't have it. So I really love this composition, and the reason I think this composition works, and I hope to pull it off, is we have a nice lead-in with the snow coming in to the willows, and then behind that is a nice stand and design of pine trees and a little snowfield in back to the left. So it has a nice lead-in, and I think the sky's kind of dull. We might be able to do something with that. But composition-wise down below, I think the shapes really work, and that's what I want to try to lay out on this 15 by 20 canvas that I have here. I'm painting canvas on Gator board, and I go back and forth between linen and a high-grade canvas because I like a tighter weave where things just don't suck in like a sponge, like some of the more inexpensive canvases that you can get from Hobby Lobby and places like that. And these are easier to erase and move because they don't suck in so hard. All right, enough said. Let's get to making a mixture. Well, again, let's talk about blue, red, yellow, basics, Naples, and my two siennas, raw and burnt, and Viridian. Titanium white, my trusty T7 palette knife, and it looks like I've got an 8 flat, a Filbert 6 or 4, and a flat 4, and it looks like a number 2 Filbert. All right, with that, I'm going to start with the Filbert number 4 to draw. So let's go with a drawing color, which would be blue, burnt sienna, touch of white, and it kind of makes a nice bluish gray. I'm going to add just a little bit of terp to my brush because it's been stiff for a couple days, and I'm going to figure out a composition foundation line. And what I'm going to do is put this foundation line a little bit above center, and that is the line right above the willows. Willows would be down here. Then there would be the big pine tree here. He's our main guy. And then the sloping hill that comes in. And comes in, and I'll give it a little bit of a up here. And down here is a willow field somewhere in here that pretty much comes across. It's kind of thin here. And this is the willows. I'm thinking in my brain that might be too thin. I'll determine that here in a few minutes. Then there's a nice V-shaped thing coming in here. So nice wedge type thing. And then I think I'm going to bring the willows a little bit forward here. More pine trees here. More pine trees here. And then there's kind of back here a snow field with pine trees in it. Oh, there's also a little flat area back in here. All right. Now, let's see, we have kind of a area here that, and I think we also have this is earth stuff. This is land without snow in it right in here. So that's my basic composition. I'm getting back because this is so important to get these things right. It's a lot easier to make changes now than later when you have a lot of paint on it. So here's this nice jagged looking thing coming in here. I love this. That's working pretty good. Now, due to the fact that I went from 15 to 20, the reference is a little bit more horizontal. So I have to kind of squeeze it together a little bit. And I'm making those changes in my own little brain to get those things right. So this is going to be the dark hills here. Okay. Now with that, let's put this brush away and let's get serious with a little bit bigger brush. I think what I had out here this morning was a number 8 Pro Stroke Flat something or other. I like these guys with the red tips on them. Been using those for a couple of years. They seem to stand up just as good as anything. I think Rosemary's are probably a little better. But our local Rosemary person that sold those in our town has gone out of business after COVID. Anyway, I'm mixing blue, a little bit of red, mostly blue, a little bit of burnt sienna. And I'll throw in some raw sienna. And I need a lot of this, so I better make a lot of it. Why am I making such a small pile? And we're going to start working on our dark shapes here. As you can see, I went from blue to raw. I started with a little bit of red. I don't think I should have done that. So I'm really whacking that out with more raw sienna and ultra blue, raw sienna, ultra blue. I hope I made enough product to get this stuff taken care of. All right, so we're going to work on trees. Just a touch, oh, maybe too much there, of thinner in there. So, just making some preliminary drawings on where this stuff should be. And I'm going to put this major fella right over in here. And next to him are going to be some other lieutenants. And I think maybe one more. students have said, "Oh, you make such nice shapes for pine trees. It looks so easy." I don't know why they took me so much time to figure them out. I think I just had to kind of get loose and let it go. Every time I try to be careful, they come out not so good. All right, so I have these little guys over to the left, so they're kind of equally spaced, and I don't think that's going to work for me. So I'm going to bunch a couple right here, and then maybe take a space with a kind of a different design right over here. I think they're a little farther back, I'm not sure. They're not too far different than what these guys are. They're just have more space in them with more light coming through. Now I can already see my mountain needs to go a little higher up in here and down. All right, so that was not a drawing error. It's just as you go along, you realize once you put some shapes in, you have to change some other behind it. Now, if I make this the same value as this, it's not going to look good. It's going to look globby. So I'm going to add a little bit of blue and some raw sienna and some Naples this time. I'm going to go back to Ultra, raw sienna, and a little bit of Naples. And these should be a little bit lighter value. Let's see what happens. I'm going to add a little bit more Naples. I have Naples on my palette too. It's a mixture for these colors. I should have my gray out because I forgot to put that out. Because that's also my second mixture. I have two mixtures. I have a Naples and a cold gray. I hate to put any terp in this, but I can't get any mileage out of it. It's just, this is a block in, and I'm just trying to get where these shapes are going to be. The important thing is get the shapes right. And I'm trying to get the values right. To some extent. They don't have to be perfect at this stage. It helps if you can get them, but it doesn't always happen. But I'm putting on the product thin enough so that we can work on top of it and make changes as needed. And now I need some trees in front of this in this slopey area that comes down. I may have brought this down too much. And if that's the case, I'm going to take it up just a little bit by erasing some of that with terp. So I put a little terp on the thinner on the paper towel, and now I'm making that meadow a little bit bigger, or that sloping area with a few trees in it. And now I'm making some more mixture of blue, raw sienna, blue, and let's start working on, these are a little darker, so I can see the difference. I don't know if you can pick that up on the camera, but I can certainly see it here that it's making a difference. I can see the difference between these. And what that does, it breaks this sharp line here that I have to a pretty good extent. There's a clump of trees right back here, and there's a number of them. And I'm putting those in now. And then more in here. As you can see, my design of pine trees is basically using the side of the brush mostly, where I have a lot of paint. And what that does is, by doing this kind of back and forth motion, it takes the paint off the brush, as well as making the boughs of the pine tree kind of come out sideways. All right. Now, do I need more pine trees? I think I need one over here, and I think we're about there now. All right. I think I'm going to have to, there's a little bit of a flat area right in here, and I'm going to bring my design of the bushes down just a little bit more of the foreground bushes down to here, and here, bring them down. Into there somewhere. Okay, so can I use anything out of this to make this kind of, oh, it's kind of got a orangey tint to it, or red tint, so I'm going to add some raw sienna to this mixture, and Naples, and a little bit of alizarin. And I'm going to add a touch of white because I want this value to be lighter than the background trees. Thinking value and shapes right now, that's the big thing I'm thinking of at this stage of the painting. Okay, I'm using the same brush. It probably has some contamination in it from the previous darks, and that's okay. Don't worry about it. Get a little bit more Naples in there, a little bit more red. You can see sometimes after I make my first stroke, I say, okay, maybe the value is right, but the color's a little off, so I try to tune it in as I do a little bit better value after I start my process of applying paint to canvas. Many times you can say, oh, it looks really good here on my palette, but once you get it on the canvas, you go, oh, not quite right. Okay. I have a little bit of need for some dark on the bottom, so I'm going to go burnt sienna, ultra blue, burnt sienna, and I'm going to make a darker area in the front of these bushes. Okay. Now it's time to go for a lighter value for these foreground earth colors. Maybe before I get too much involved in that, I'm just going to mix my whole palette together, see if there's anything left, very little left, but I'll use it. In here there's a number of dark bushes coming up out of this bushy area. These are like sage on top of earth here. They're scattered throughout here. I'm just trying to get my darks off of all edges of my brush. As you can see me twirl it and try to do an uniform design to emulate some of these different softer edges. All right, let's get ready for the next value. Okay, I've already told you that it needs to be lighter down here. I'm making that judgment just by looking at the reference. And of course there's a number of darks what are the base of these little sage bushes here. So let's start with raw sienna. If you don't have raw, add some dark sienna, Naples, and some ultra blue. Go easy with the blue. You want to bring it up. And I need a lot of that, so I'm going to go more Naples, more raw sienna, and now cautiously come in with my ultra blue. This is what I call my basic palette. Now I get a little bit more exotic, yes I do, when I start working in later stages of the painting. But for sure, I'm usually working out of my basic palette at this first stage of the painting called block-in. And that's looking pretty good. I'm going to add a little bit more blue. Come on, don't overdo it. And now it's time to get this contaminated brush full of the new product and get it in here. Oh boy, this is going to be stiff. Come on. More blue. You just tell the way it's going on, I needed a little bit more mixture. I'll probably run short again. I know you hear me kick myself many times as I paint because I never make enough of this stuff. So always make more than you think you need, that's what I say. I gotta stabilize my canvas a little better. Let me get this bottom done and I'll put it in the groove. I have a groove board below here that holds these gator board sizes just right. So with that done in the bottom, I'll get this in the groove and now stabilize it, and you can see it won't move now. I figured out that little problem. Now, this is not the prettiest, most interesting color in the world. So what we're going to do is figure out ways as we go along in part 2 and 3 to make this kind of dull color interesting. But I like to have these dark bases. I'd rather go put these dark bases in first and then work on top of them. And if you just don't slop this on too thick, you can work on top of them quite successfully. So this part 1 is block-in. And for you people that are seeing this on part 1 on YouTube, I have part 2 and 3 on Uscreen, which is a paid platform. It's a very reasonable thing, monthly fee, less than $10. So that's my commercial. Now I'm getting back, taking a look at it, and what I think I need, once you fill in your blocks, your shapes, you go, oh, my shape needs to go thicker, thinner, stuff like that. And what I'm seeing here is, when I look at the reference, which I really like on the lower section, is I could do a little bit more, just squeeze it a little bit more up here. Almost comes across. I think one of these, I've got 2 of these things coming out here, and I think I'm going to eliminate one. So let me get this one done and eliminate that. So what is primary in this stage is shapes and values. We started with the dark values, and that's how we are starting. And now I'm going to get this little guy out here. Let's see if I can clean him up a little bit. And even take this farther in. So I got a little bit more turp on my rag. It's actually a paper towel, I mean. And I'm going to even thin this out a little bit more because I like this design I see on the reference. I already have it coming off the canvas over here. I don't think absolutely necessary to take it off over here. Because the key to this stage of the painting and landscape painting is these are kind of random shapes that somehow in nature pulls off this balance just by this randomness. You're probably wondering what the hell I'm talking about, but by looking at landscape compositions for the last 23 years, I've come to realize nature has this tremendous balance in irregularity. But, like if you look at the reference, you can see that these trees over here kind of have a regularity. They have A, B, C, D, almost looking the same. Where this part right here has a big guy and two little guys. Yeah, so that's why I changed the design over here on these trees to the upper right. All right, so let's see how we're doing on time. And let's do some changes here and work in the snow area. So snow and sky kind of look the same, which is kind of boring. So let me see what I can do with the sky here and see if I can get some warmth in here. So we have a cold painting with all these trees and snow and stuff like that. So let's see what we can do about coming up with a design that might be kind of a little bit more interesting to us, and start with the sky first. So let's stick with the old ultra blue. I was running a little thin, so I'm adding some more to my palette. And let's look at some permanent yellow light, or just a little bit different than our normal lemon. So let's make a mixture. So with that, let's throw out some white. And I've got some red mixed in it from contamination, and I'll see if I can use it. Now I'm going to add just a little bit of iridium to kill the kind of gray out the red. And now we're going to add a little permanent yellow to it. And it's coming out to be a beautiful color. All right, so let's apply that. And this time I have to clean this number 8 or 10 or whatever I have here in my hand. And again, I want to put this in thin. I can add more yellow to it. Oh boy, it went a little strong, but we'll see. And here we go with just a little bit of blue to knock that around just a little bit. And I'm going to get that in large areas here. Now I'm going to finish that off camera and take some time when I get closer to my darks. Try not to contaminate, my sky too much, but I'm going to be doing that off camera. Now for down below here, I'm going to add some white and some gray mixture to just kind of have a good base, kind of a gray and blue. I forgot to put my cold gray out. Here it is. Don't need much of it. This is a Rembrandt color, number 717. Rembrandt. All right, let's grab some white, touch of gray, touch of blue. And let's make this our base. And I'll be putting that in the snowy area off camera. All right, so I'm going to work with these two different light values, and I'll be doing that, and then we'll be ready for tomorrow. All right. Thanks very much for coming by for part one, and YouTubers, you know, take a look at my stuff over there on Uscreen. It's a very reasonable thing. I think this week I'll have 103 of my very best videos, and as time goes on, we're just going to be adding more and more videos. Most of them are three-parters, and I break them into about 30-minute stuff, and making it easy for you to follow step by step. All right, that's my commercial too. Thanks so much for coming by, and I'll see you in part two. All right, bye-bye.